What is up, my brothers and sisters, my agents of respect? It's your boy TreJuanJohnson back with another episode of the No Disrespect Bud podcast. Before we get started, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. Always feel free to comment. Just please make sure you keep those comments respectful. And if you're interested in supporting your favorite podcaster, yours truly, the link to do so will be in the episode description. Although I am thinking about just putting my Cash App in there. So that may change. If you see that when you watch the video, you may see that. But today, Tuesday, October 15th, it's been kind of a type of season for both my New Orleans Saints and my Alabama Crimson Tide. Now, Alabama still has a lot in front of them to play for, including the SEC title and championship as well. Obviously, a playoff berth in that regard, too. And the Saints are kind of in flux. Do they have something to play for in terms of division playoffs? Yeah, technically speaking, they're only 1-2 um, in the division. I think that means think that puts them maybe a game and a half outside of first place in the division. And we know that Tampa's schedule is about to heat up. Um, the Falcons are about to get into a bit of a stretch too. They were able to make it out of a 6 game stretch at 4-2. So shout out to them for that. But they're about to get in the middle of a few games that can go here or there, and who knows? The Saints could be back, in the division race and vying for a playoff spot, or they could be just selling house and vying for a top pick in the 2025 NFL draft, and all the while getting some valuable looks at some of the young guys on the roster, maybe finding new homes for some of the aging guys, giving them an opportunity to compete for championships. So there's a lot at stake. And so what I wanted to utilize today's show for is just think about some of the questions surrounding each of my two favorite football teams. Um, you know, if you're wondering when I'm gonna talk basketball, because hoops does return next week, or NBA hoops returns next week, that will be a Friday episode. And FYI, that will be the last Friday episode, probably until well into the new year. My work schedule with college athletics is starting to heat up, and there's a lot of weekend stuff. So I want to try to protect those Fridays. So just an FYI, this Friday will be the last Friday episode of No Disrespect, but for at least the next, what is that, 3-4 months. So you'll catch me on Tuesdays, and then on Wednesdays, catch me on the Bayou Ballers podcast with my boy Tay Visual. So make sure you guys are tuned into that tomorrow. But like I said, just want to use this show to think about some of the questions surrounding these two teams, and some of the questions that I ask myself, some of the questions that I see some of the respective fan base or some members in the fan base ask, and some questions that people have asked me directly. Um, so we'll get into it, and I always want to start with the professionals first, and man, because that's the most disappointing of my teams right now. But and most recently we started our fifth round draft pick, Spencer Rattler. He got his first start. Was a very mixed bag. 22 of 44, which you never want a rookie quarterback. Hell, you don't really want your starting quarterback that's a veteran throwing the ball 40 plus times in a game. But 22 of 44, so 50% completion rate. One touchdown, two picks. Quite of a mixed bag. Took 5 sacks, if I'm not mistaken, in the game. So got to clean up some things there. I think there were some schematic things, but I think there were some things with the quarterback just maybe holding on to the ball a little bit too long, or not getting it, wanting to keep plays alive instead of throwing the ball away and living to see another down, and obviously keeping yourself clean. But I think there was a lot of excitement with Spencer Rattler's first start. And I think since then, there's been some questions about, okay, where do we go from here? And so let's start there. Where do we go from here? Well, Coach Dennis Allen at least let us know the immediate aspect of it, and that's he's going to be starting this Thursday against the Denver Broncos at home. Um, going against the top defense in the league. They may be without Pat Surtain II, but still a really good defense nevertheless. Obviously led by Sean Payton, who once upon a time was everything to the city of New Orleans as its head coach, leading them to new heights, leading them to multiple winning seasons. Obviously, their first and only Super Bowl to date, and so there's a lot of history that he has here. But Spencer's going to have another chance to develop. I think in real time in game with game film and working on his mechanics. Um, and I think this is the game. Believe it or not, this has to be the game to put pressure on the organization to stick with him. That's not saying the guy has to come out and throw for 400, 500 yards or anything like that. But I think if he plays the way he played that first half against Tampa Bay, relatively clean, getting the ball where it needs to go, taking care of the ball, being efficient, utilizing his legs a little bit. Um, I think if he continued to do that against the Denver Broncos, who can be had as a defense, despite how dominant they are, they're coming off a loss, and I think he can maybe outplay his fellow rookie in that matchup, Bo Nix. And so I think if let's say a stat line of, I think he had 230 last game, so let's say 240, 240 yards passing, maybe two touchdowns. No turnovers, because he did have two interceptions last game and had a fumble that he recovered. So, no turnover worthy plays or anything like that. And giving the defense opportunities to make plays and get their offense the ball in short fields. So I think, two touchdowns, maybe no turnover. We would love no turnover, maybe one turnover. He is a rookie. And I think if we get a win, and I think we saw some things against Tampa Bay that we opened the offense up a little bit. You saw that we were able to get him some off-platform throws, which, quite frankly, you can't do with Derek Carr at this state of his career. I mean, I don't think you ever really could, especially after his injury in 2016. But you for sure can't do it now, and so I think to some degree that's handicapped the offensive play calling. And I think what we saw, especially in that first half, was uh, a more open playbook with a quarterback that can utilize their legs, can make throws on the run. But unfortunately, with some of the injuries continuing to happen at the wide receiver position, still having some shifting on the offensive line, I think we got away from some of the creativity, weren't able to make some rushing lanes happen. And obviously, that put us in a lot of third and long situations, which you just don't want a young quarterback in. You don't want any quarterback in, but definitely not a rookie making his first start. And so I think we're going to try to get some more quick hitters. I love seeing our tight ends over the middle of the field. I love seeing that be able to be utilized in this offense. I mean, there were a few throws that Spencer missed, like a throw where he had um, Hokerson wide open in the end zone. And so those are things that you're like, yeah, he can, or Dan Hoker, I'm sorry. I would say Hokerson, but Hoker. Um, he had that guy open. He can make that play. Once we look at film, we might see something like that again and an opportunity like that again. And I felt like Spencer's legs helped a lot of throwing lanes. And that's going to be uber important because we might be without Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed in this matchup. And so if you don't have guys that are winning right away, in this league, it helps that having a guy that can extend plays by time, and be able to buy his wide receivers and pass catchers time to get open. I think you're going to see Alvin Kamara used even more heavily, especially if his body can withstand it. There's some positivity that Taysom Hill may be playing. So again, when we talk about where we go from here with Spencer, I think we at least know he has this Thursday to turn some heads, turn some eyes in the organization, something he's already been doing since he stepped foot into the organization. And this is just another round of his audition because we aren't just auditioning for the rest of this year and more playing time this year. We're auditioning for if you're the guy that we start to try to build the 25 offseason around. And I believe that, if he does play well and, after this 10-day break, Derek Carr's oblique still isn't responding to treatment the way you want it, and you don't really want to rush him back out there. You're 3-4 going against the Chargers, which is a team that can be had. Justin Herbert's dealing with the high ankle sprain. They've been having some injuries to their backfield and to their defense, so that could be a win you can sneak on the road. And now you're looking at 500 football with an opportunity going into the easiest stretch of your schedule, and then you were faced with a decision. And I think if Spencer is the quarterback for these next two games, and we win these next two games, and obviously that means Dennis Allen is still the head coach. That means Clint Kubiak is still the offensive play caller, and things are as we went into this season as they should be. Hopefully, you're getting a guy like Cesar Ruiz back healthy. Hopefully, Alvin Kamara and Taysom are a little bit more more healed now. Maybe Chris Olave's back from concussion. Maybe Shaheed's back from whatever he's dealing with. And now we can really start to mold and see what this team can be, especially offensively. I can tell you that there's going to be a lot of discussion about whether 18 gets the nod. And and I've said this before. Look, I don't believe that Derek Carr has played bad enough to just outright lose his job due to injury, but I don't believe he's played well enough to say, hey, if this young man is hot and a guy we put draft capital in, that we just don't stick with him and have, Derek be that quarterback too. One thing I did that stood out to me this past weekend was he was kind of vocal on the sideline and working with Spencer Rattler, and kind of showing him some things. And so I think that kind of shows some growth on his part. And you're hoping that should they decide, hey, we're going to go with Spencer for the rest of the season, we want you to be his backup, but look, after the season's over, we're going to do right by you. We're going to try to figure out a trade partner. If we can't do a trade, excuse me, we'll do the post-June cut, but let you go out and meet whoever you need to meet with to find you another opportunity in the National Football League. And so I think, excuse me, thought I had to sneeze. Ooh, sorry about that. But so I do think that's a possibility, and I think a lot is for Derek Carr is riding on this too. I think if he has an exit with the New Orleans Saints like he did with the Las Vegas Raiders, I don't think another team is bringing him in, because after this contract or after this tenure with the Saints, there are no more guarantees of being a QB1 on any team. There will be some competition. There will be maybe an expectation that as a veteran quarterback, 12, 13 years in, that you can mentor a young guy that's recently been drafted a la Andy Dalton and maybe come in and start a few games when needed, but knowing that this young guy who we drafted is the guy. And so if he's shown in two different stints that he can't humble himself and be that good teammate when when he's no longer the QB1, I think a lot of teams out in the market are going to find it hard to bring a guy like that into their organization. So, how Derek Carr handles this whole situation is going to say a lot about what the rest of his NFL career looks like, whether that's with the New Orleans Saints or not. Um, that's just my 2 cents on Spencer Rattler. I know another question with the Saints and things that people have been talking about is what happens with Dennis Allen, especially if we lose this game. We lose this game against Denver. Yes, you're losing against your former head coach who quit on you, but that's also 5 straight losses. And look, the Saints' MO, they typically don't fire head coaches in season, but I believe that if we are to lose this Thursday, I believe, especially with the 10-day break of preparing for the next game, I believe that Dennis Allen will be relieved of duties. We heard what general manager Mickey Loomis kind of said and saying, hey, you can't put everything on the head coach. You got to kind of look at, why aren't we winning games? Why are we on a losing streak? Um, but as often as Miss Gail likes to go shopping and worry about her basketball team in New Orleans, I do think there's starting to become some type of realization in her camp and in her circle. that she needs to start paying a little bit more attention to the football side of things. And look, she sees that we're losing. It's not like she's in la la land. And I think it's gonna be one of those things where she ends up pulling rank. We know there's been instances where she gets involved, like the pursuit of Deshaun Watson. Hey, whatever you need, I'm gonna get this done. And so I think this might be an instance where I think she gets involved, and maybe pulls the trigger of, hey, my fans, our fan base, they expect better. We're not getting that right now. We need to make changes. And if you're not willing to make the changes, that being Mickey Loomis, like my husband was beholden to you. I'm not beholden to you. And that's the truth of the matter. She's not beholden to him. Yes, Tom had, a relationship with Mickey Loomis, like a father-son dynamic. I mean, the guy's in the will for crying out loud. But again, that's the husband's relationship. And that's not to say that Gail Benson doesn't have a relationship with Mickey Loomis. I think they're close as well. But how she feels about this city and about this fan base, I think it's starting to take a toll on her as well, because now things are starting to get to her door. I believe that the initial uh, thought process was, hey, let the football guys handle the football. She look, the reason why we got the Pelicans is because that's her baby. She wanted that. She wanted to be able to focus on that. And I think you can tell that there's a level of attention that she applies to that basketball team that's a little bit void on the football team. And I believe that's going to change soon if Mickey isn't willing to make the hard decisions that need to be made. And that decision is if we lose this game, five games in a row, you have to move on from the head coach. You cannot allow this to fester on for the rest of the season with the same guy in charge and then say, hey, I'm going to figure out on the back end. Because here's the thing. At some point, this guy's going to know that he's no longer the head coach and that we're just waiting to can him after the season. And so there's going to be more sabotage, more so purposeful going on. And so I think if we lose this game, uh, due to the magnitude of the game and the importance of it and the storylines around it, I think that shows that the coach has lost the locker room, especially if we lose in the fashion that we lost this past weekend, where your defense is just getting run up and down the field, and you just can't, you can't stop a cold, really. And I think we're getting to that point as a team, as a fan base, and I think as an organization. I know they haven't shown us much over these past few years, especially since Sean's left and Drew's retired. But there are some members in that organization. I can tell you that. And I think if we lose, I think you end up. I think it's a strong possibility that the Saints and Dennis Allen part ways because white coaches don't get fired; they part ways. I believe that Darren Rizzi, our special teams coordinator, ends up becoming your interim for the rest of the season. I believe Clint Kubiak keeps his play calling duties. I believe that our linebackers coach ends up getting the nod to be the defensive play caller. I believe, look, Joe Woods is cool people, but I don't know if he has many friends in the building. He's a DA guy, and that's perfectly fine. DA is the head coach, and he's allowed to bring his guys in. But I can see a guy like Hodges being that play caller, have an opportunity to showcase his skills. And maybe have an opportunity, if not, with the new regime and being that defensive coordinator, maybe going on and sign on with somebody else. Rizzi, I think he's a mainstay. I don't care who you bring in. I think he's a guy that's going to always be the special teams coach on whatever regime it is. I think that's just what it is. But we can see that. And last but not least, I think at that point you're 2-5. You fired your coach. I think you say, hey, we're going to roll with 18. We're going to build, see what we have. You probably try to offload guys, see who's willing to take Alvin Kamara, see who's willing to take a Marshawn Lattimore. Honestly, have a conversation with those guys and see what they want and say, hey, look, this isn't the season we wanted to have. This isn't the way we want you guys to be, the type of football we want you guys to be playing at this point in your career. But we are rebuilding. And so, look, we'd love to keep you and have you kind of be a part of this overhaul in 25, 26. But if you feel like, hey, this is not where you are in your career, I think we will find a home for those guys on the deadline, and I think Marshawn has probably a little bit more of a market than AK does right now, but still, probably the two best players on our team. Ain't no probably about it. They are the two best players on our team, and so you might have to part ways with them and just build around Spencer and just see what it is. And if Spencer over the course of at that point it would be 10 games left over the course of the next 10 and he doesn't do well and he's not showing you something, hey, that new coach is going to have every right. If we have a top 3 to 5 pick, hey, I want to bring my own quarterback in, and that's fine. Guys are going to have to prove that they're supposed to be a part of this new regime, and if they aren't, they aren't. Just is what it is. Um, but that's if we lose. I think enough isn't, or it's not being talked about enough of what happens if we win. And I think if we win, if even for that one game, it shows that the locker room in itself isn't totally lost, right? I think it shows that the veteran leaders in that group, they're like, hey, we can't lose this game, we can't lose this season. It doesn't end today because it's do or die. It's almost like a playoff game. It's kind of win or go home. It's going to dictate a lot of what we do the rest of the season. Because at the rate our division is playing, you have to win 10 games minimum. It's looking like you'll probably have to win 11 to get in because NFC North has 4 teams with 4 wins in the first 6 weeks. Obviously, they'll start to cannibalize each other and that'll change. Um, NFC West is doing some things between the Seahawks and the 49ers, and you still have the Cardinals and the Rams lurking around. Um, and then the NFC East, you still have the Cowboys lurking around. You have the Philadelphia Eagles and you have the Washington Commanders that are doing their thing. So there are a lot of teams in the NFC that could be vying for those wild card spots that are available if we don't win the division. There are 7 spots, 4 go-to division winners. And if we're not one of those division winners, there's only 3 spots left. And right now, the NFC North and I would say the NFC West are in the lead. I think the NFC North could get 2 of those teams in, and I think the NFC West can get an additional team like Seattle in. So you're going to be shit out of luck if you lose this game. It's going to be hard because we still have some matchups coming up that's going to be hard to win. We can win, but it's going to be hard nevertheless. So if we do win, and here's the thing, I think we will win this game. I think another week of practice with Spencer Rattler, or another, coming up, knowing he's the guy and building the game plan around him, I think this is going to help. Obviously, we're going to be without some wide receivers, but I think we showed that he has chemistry with the backup. So it's almost like you won't really be missing much in the sense of a chemistry standpoint. I think you're going to miss talent, no doubt, but there's ways we can get around, especially if Seven is able to muster up the strength to play this week. And if we win, I think that buys. I would say that buys DA the rest of the season. I'm sorry, that's just the truth of the matter. If we win this game, we go to 3-4, having a chance on 10 days rest to go to LA and get to 500 football with the amount of injuries we've had, with as bad as our defense has been the first few weeks. I think he gets the season. And look, that doesn't mean he's going to be the head coach next season, but I think for sure that buys him time to finish this season because again, like I said, we're going into the easiest stretch of our schedule. We have the easiest schedule in the NFL, and that was mainly because of that back end of the schedule. Now, granted, there are some good teams. I think the Rams are a better team than their record shows. Obviously, the Commanders are a lot better than we all thought they would be this season. Those are 2 teams on our schedule. We still have the Falcons we got to take care of. Is Andy Dalton the quarterback of Carolina? They've been playing a little bit better football since he's been inserted into the starting lineup. Obviously, you have Tampa Bay again. So there's a lot to play for if we win this game, and I think that's going to result in Dennis Allen keeping his job. And then you start to say, okay, well, we get a Cesar Reeves back. Then maybe in a couple other weeks we get an Eric McCoy back. We're getting healthier on defense. Will Harris might be back. Maybe Howden's started to generate and be better. Abram has shown in flashes that he can still make plays. Got a big interception this past weekend. Tyrann Mathieu, is he healthy? His body's been kind of picking on him this year, but is he kind of getting into the groove? Is Marshawn Lattimore still with us? Because he's been on a tear. I think if we were winning ball games, the undisputed first team All Pro on defense, and I think he would be getting some votes for Defensive Player of the Year. I mean, the guy's on track to be targeted less than 40 times this season. That's insane in a passing league. So a lot can happen. And I wish we talk more about what happens if DA wins. I get it. A lot of people want him gone. I don't think he's the best coach of this team either, but I do want him to be better. And if he can show, if he can rally the guys and in a moment like we're in, start to rally the troops. And look, like I said, I think if Spencer Rattler plays well, as much as you say about DA, I think he wants to win. It's not just his decision to make. It's going to be last. I mean, it's going to be the final decision that he makes, or the final decision comes up to him. But there's going to be input from the coaching staff. There's going to be input from the front office. There's going to be input from the locker room. And if they pick 18 to roll with, you got to be the guy to roll with 18. But if you decide, hey, I know what the locker room's saying, I know what the organization is saying, I know what the offensive staff is saying, but I got to stick with my gut and I got to ride with Carr. Look, that's fine too. But guess what? If the games don't go the way we need to go, and you don't pull the trigger and bring an 18 back in, I think you're probably sealing your own fate there. But a lot is dependent on this game, our quarterback situation, our coaching situation. A lot is dependent on the outcome of this game against Denver. Um, Last question or last thing is as we look at our roster and what are we looking at? What are the pieces that the Saints are saying, hey, we want to add to that. We want to add this position to our team and add depth here or add playmakers here. And do we want to do it in the draft? Do we want to do it in free agency? Well, look, I'll tell you, I believe the positions, and look, this isn't rocket science. I think we see it starting to come to fruition 6 weeks in or 6 games in. Excuse me, what some of our needs are. Obviously, wide receiver is a need. So I think you look at guys like a Luther Burden III out of Missouri. You look like at a Trey Harris out of Ole Miss, a guy that can stretch the floor. Luther Burden is a yak merchant, and that's the one thing we're missing in this offense. I think you have the deep threat in Shaheed. I think you have the all around route runner in Chris Olave. I think you're missing that yak guy, the guy you just put the ball in his hands, he can get you 10, 15 yards extra. Our Debo Samuel, if you will. I think Luther Burden can be that for us. Obviously, Trey Harris, another deep threat, but he's a big body receiver as well. Has done some great things at Ole Miss. You look at a guy like Emeka Egbuka, I think is how you pronounce his last name. Sorry if I mispronounce it. Out of the Ohio State. We love our Ohio State guys, and he's kind of more of a bigger receiver, elite route runner as well. Um, you know, kind of the same thing as Chris Olave, but I think if you add Emeka, you allow Chris Olave to diversify his portfolio as a wideout too. Um, I think we got some good tight end prospects. I think that's something we're looking at. Obviously, you Foster Moreau, TreJuanJohnson have been playing well in recent weeks. You're still looking at Dallin Holker and what he can be. I believe he can be our tight end one when it's all said and done, but I think you're wanting to grow that position. So obviously a guy like Tyler Warren comes to mind. Can't his name is escaping me, but tight end from Miami. That's someone who I believe we have an eye on. Gunnar Helm over at Texas is someone we have an eye on. So definitely want to develop there. Safety is going to be big. Now, I think there are a lot of young safeties coming up in this draft that you might want to look at, but I think there's going to be some guys in free agency too. We always like to try to get some veterans in there, but I think we do a good mix of veteran and young guy. And so I think you're going to see that this offseason where we may sign a safety in free agency, but we may very well draft a safety relatively high in the 2025 NBA NFL draft. Running back, I think we've all kind of talked about the need for that and to improve that room, especially if everybody's getting another year, meaning Dennis Allen, Clint Kubiak in his system. You need more explosiveness from the running back position. Um, I'm sorry to my boy Logan Aston Genty is not a priority in the sense of we would get him in the first round, but he is a guy that, hell, if he fell to us and we felt like he was the BPA, I think we draft a guy like that out of Boise State, who has tremendous explosiveness at the running back position. I think you're looking at a guy like Quinshawn Judkins out of the Ohio State, Travion Henderson out of Ohio State. Then you're having a guy like Alec Gordon, who's having a horrific year right now um, at Oklahoma State, but maybe a guy you can nab in the fourth round because he hasn't had such a good season so far, but had an outstanding sophomore season. So if he decides to go to the pros, even though I believe he's going to stay in college for one more year and end up transferring to a team, might be transferring to Bama, who knows? But I think a guy like Ali Gordon, who has shown himself to be an explosive runner, can also be a bell cow, relatively healthy, can take those carries and that usage rate, but also can make some plays in the pass game. So looking at him. Um, a guy I really like is the running back out of Arizona State. Got a chance to watch him the other night and just seeing what he was able to do in the run game and the passing game. That sounds like a Kubiak Shanahan special if I've ever seen one. So um, and those are just some guys that either I like or I've been hearing the names a little bit. So really looking forward to uh, seeing what comes out of that. In terms of the running back, but I do know that's a position that the Saints are looking at. Obviously, the trenches, offensive line, defensive line, those are always going to be things that they're paying attention to. Still wanting to grow that defensive interior. I think from an edge standpoint, I think you're going to see us continue to try to get maybe some younger edges that are trying to on some prove it deals. Like, look, Chase Young's been great for us. I don't know if he's going to get a big contract, but I think he's somebody we might bring back on another 2 year deal or another 1 year deal. Obviously, Carl Granson has gotten his money. You're seeing Foskey starting to get a few more snaps. And so I think we're going to be adding some young guys kind of in that 25 to 27-year-old range that just want to have a chance to prove themselves, be on a deep rotation, which is what the Saints have at the edge position. I wouldn't say we would quite draft an edge, high like first, second round the way we've done before. But I do think in terms of the defensive line, we're really wanting somebody who can stuff. Like our run defense has been atrocious. And one of the reasons why that's the case is because we don't have guys that can just push the center and the guards back. Brazil has been really good, much better in pass rush than he is against the run. And I think you're starting to need a guy that can play opposite Brazil, occupy occupy that center and that guard, allow Brazil to work one on one on the inside and push into the quarterback. And I think furthermore, and probably more importantly, you're allowing those edges to really get home and just close that space for that quarterback. And I think that's probably the missing piece to getting this defensive line where it needs to be. Linebacker, Jahad Campbell, a name to watch. Um, you want somebody who's athletic, a guy that can think almost be hybrid in a way with the way we play. The NFL is playing these days. You need a linebacker that can cover, not just running backs, some tight ends, hell, maybe even shoot out in the slot sometimes, just to give you options. And I think a guy like Jahad Campbell definitely presents those opportunities. You're hoping that Pete Warner is healthy. You just signed to an extension. Willie Gay, I believe, was signed to a 2 year deal. So he's shown some flashes. So there are some elements of the team that we're looking at. But I would say if you're saying, hey, Trey, what's, in your opinion, the priority list for the Saints? I would say top five needs in order. I would say you're looking at wide receiver. I would say you're looking at linebacker. I would say interior offensive line, safety, interior defensive line. That's kind of my five. And then I think running back kind of slides in there. So those are kind of like my top five. And I think, look, a lot of our offseason depends on who the quarterback is in a way. If neither quarterback on this roster has shown themselves to be the one, and we end up with a top five pick, I think you're looking at quarterback first, right? If you feel like you got Spencer Rattler and he's a guy you can build around and you move on from Derek Carr and bring in a guy like Joe Flacco or Brandon Allen, guys that just know the system, bring those guys in to be the vet, figure out what you want to do with Jake Hayner. Um, I could see us going the pass catcher route. I can see us taking a flyer on a running back just because, hey, that's the best guy on the board, and we want to build around Spencer Rattler. I can see us taking a guy like Tyler Booker, left guard, out of Alabama. I can see an Emory Jones who has the potential to play guard or tackle. So I can see us, making some headway on the offensive line. I don't think defensive line would be a premium pick this year. I think it's going to be probably third round on this year. I think in my heart of hearts, I think we um, try to address that in free agency and get some veteran guys, some proven guys that have done that. And then you allow guys like Brzee and Christian Boyd to continue to develop and grow, and even Colin Sanders, for that matter, because he's still relatively young. Um, but a lot depends on. I mean, if we have our quarterback, there's a lot more you can do, especially because he's on a rookie contract. At that point in time, you'll have 2 years left on his rookie deal before you have to pay him anything, and you can really kind of go in. We're already kind of getting things cap wise together, um, and so I'm looking forward to what this season ends up being because it's going to give us a greater idea of what this offseason will look like. But those are my kind of the three things that I've kind of been buzzing around with the Saints. What's the Spencer Rattler deal? What's the future with him? What's the future of Dennis Allen and the coaching staff? And what are our needs? What are we looking for? Um, and and then hopefully I've kind of given you guys some level of perspective of what to kind of think about those three different areas. But I'm always interested in hearing everybody else's kind of feedback or opinions on those matters, whether it's those three matters I brought up or if there's more questions. Feel free to comment under here what the questions might be, or you can always hit me up at Future NBA Gov or at Bud Disrespect on Twitter/X. I always try to answer any questions that I get, so always feel free to do that. Um, Now I'll just go to Bama. Finish off on, I guess, more of a positive note because Bama's at least been playing well. 5-1, number 17 in the nation. I think right now they're fourth in the rankings in the SEC. So got to get that up because now it's the top two teams in the SEC standings that make it to the SEC championship game in Atlanta. And so we have a lot of work to do. We have some great matchups coming up. Um, but just kind of thinking about the season, um, you know, questions or topics that come up, I think is the main one is the defense, right? What's going on with the defense? We've been giving up explosive play after explosive play after explosive play. I believe there was a metric that said from 2014 to 2023, we'd only given up one 16-play drive. We've given up three so far this season. So the thing is, that means we're not getting teams off the field on third and fourth downs. And these past few weeks, past since second half of the Georgia game, really, so past 2.5 weeks, you can say, it's just been atrocious getting the opposing team off the field. A lot of former Bama players are talking about the scheme, the 4-2-5 scheme that Coach Womack runs, and I think that has some degree to do with it. But I think some of it is execution. I think there's been moments where we've gotten to the quarterback and haven't been able to capitalize on it and keep contained. There's been moments where we've gotten to the quarterback, forced a negative play, but a positive on our end, but we hit the quarterback in the face mask or got a little bit too aggressive, getting them to the ground. It's a roughing the passer penalty. I think we still have instances where we get busted in coverage, and I think a lot of that is this constant shuffling at the cornerback position. I'm not quite a fan of that. And so personally, I would like to see us start to narrow down who are going to be the guys going forward. Because I think one thing that kind of affects the communication between the safeties because Malachi Moore, Keon Sabb, Devontae Smith, those are your three constants in the defensive back rotation. And I think them constantly having to, you know, figure out their teammates on the fly while also trying to figure out what the offense is trying to do to attack them. I think that's starting to get a little bit more difficult. Um, I want to see us blitz more, but not be relying on the blitz, if that makes sense. I feel like we're not getting as much 3 and 4 man pressure as I would like, especially against mobile quarterbacks and being able to get them down. Um, and I want to see a little bit more athleticism out of the linebacking core. Jahad Campbell is an animal in himself, but Justin Jefferson, Deontay Lawson, I feel like there are stretches where they're just out athleted, if that's even a word. And I think we got to get better at that position and just beating guys to spots and just kind of seeing the game within the game. But overall, I've seen some good things. It's just kind of been a headache not getting off the freaking field. But our ability to force turnovers, our ability to again generate some pressure on the opposing quarterback. Um, I do think coach has to stop playing down the competition, so to speak. Um, I think if we're in an aggressive defense, we should be aggressive against everyone. I don't feel like we should play safe against quarterbacks because they aren't your drop back can kill you with their arm type quarterback. Because we played two guys in a row that aren't, you wouldn't confuse them for Joe Montana. But the things they can do with their legs and extended plays, if you don't get pressure on them, they can give you a headache. And we're going up against a guy in Nico over in Tennessee that can do the same thing. And he's a redshirt freshman. We've seen opposing defenses, get the better of him when they get pressure on him. But if we can't get pressure on him and Josh Heupel's offense, it's going to be a long night for us. So we're gonna have to be able to get some pressure on the quarterback, force them into some turnovers, give our offense, our explosive offense at that, some short fields, um, and go from there. But overall, I'm liking what I'm seeing from the defense. I just want to get a handle on the defensive back situation. Want us to get a consistent pass rush without having the blitz. And I want us to always keep the same mentality, not play down and not coach down to the talent level or the perceived talent level of the quarterback and the offense that we're facing. So I'd like to see that. Another thing I would like to see is more uses of the running backs. Um, I think you saw later in the game that Jalen Milroe is just winded, and I think he's getting winded. And we have a long season, guys. Like there's a 12-team playoff now, so there's more games being added to the slate, and we're going to need him. Um, I don't think we can win a national championship without Jalen Milroe this year, because he's covering a lot of deficiencies in that offense right now. And so we have to do what we can to protect him. And we have two great backs in Justice Haynes and Jan Miller. I would love to see them play a lot better. I think the two of them are maybe tiptoeing a little bit when it comes to rushing lanes, and I get it. Patience is a virtue, and sometimes as a running back, you have to be a little bit patient. But I think they're missing some opportunities to hit the gaps that our offensive line that they're creating and being able to get some big yardage plays. But what's been most disappointing is short yardage situations. I feel like it's been so hard for our running backs to get those short yardage situations, and we've been kind of forcing Jalen to have to take that on, which is fine. I mean, shit, he's probably the best runner on our team, but I believe that when quarterbacks take a lot of hits, their throwing mechanics start to go off. And I think that's what we saw with Jalen. He was missing throws, missed a lot of throws to Ryan Williams. That interception, you would love to see Jeremy Bernard go get that ball, but he didn't. And you kind of put a little bit too much air in it and allowed that defensive back to come in. And so you're not reading the defense the way you normally would because you've been taking hits as a runner, you've been taking the hits as the way they've been getting the pressure on you. We're going to have to scheme better with offensive protection. I think we saw 2 weeks in a row that the opposing defensive line was able to get hits on our quarterback, and get free guys to our quarterback, and we just can't have that anymore. Again, we're going to go as far as Jalen Milroe can take us, and we need him available to be able to do that. Yes, should we still utilize his running ability? Of course. But I believe kind of how in that first half against Georgia, we were getting the ball out, intermediate throws. He's been phenomenal in those, setting up the deep shots to Ryan Williams, Jeremy Bernard, and those types of things, getting the tight ends involved. But most importantly, we got to get our running backs. We got to have more of a traditional run game. You know, even if you got to use Richard Young, use Daniel Hill. We got to start seeing guys, um, in that running back room really start to push this year, towards the end of the year, because we're going to need them now. And we can't have Jalen Milrow getting tired and winded, because there's going to be games down the stretch where we need his arm to win. And if he's banged up and he can't do that, that's going to be hard for us to win the games we need to win to get to where we want to be. And I think I would say the last question, or concern, if you will, with Alabama, um, is how do we clean up the negative plays? And what I mean by that is the penalties. I think we had some issues with some penalties. I think we had some issues with trying to be too cute at times. I think we've started to develop a little bit of a turnover bug, and we lost one week, we survived another week, and how do we get out of this mode of survival and just playing the game the right way? And so that's one thing. I don't think we played complimentary football yet. Outside that first half against Georgia, I don't think we've played complimentary football. We haven't played the best Alabama football that there remains to be seen, that's out there, that's available. Um, and so I want to see, as we get to the thick of this schedule, we got um, Tennessee on the road, Missouri at home, a bye, LSU on the road. Those are three big games. You win those three, you're 8-1. A lot to play for in front of you. I think at that point, there's three regular season games left, because I know we have Oklahoma, Mercer, Auburn. So three regular season games. You end up being 11-1. Hopefully, putting yourself in a position to be in Atlanta for the SEC championship game, which um, I firmly believe we will be playing Georgia again. I know Georgia has a tough stretch. I know Texas has been, I mean, the best team in college football to date. But it's just something about those Bulldogs and Kirby Smart. I'm not going to count them out, but I think I'll put it this way: we will face the winner of the Texas UGA game this weekend. I think that's who we're going to end up facing in Atlanta. But a lot for Alabama to play for. But I want to see them play complimentary football. I think that's one thing we're missing. We've been missing for a very long time, maybe the last 3 or 4 years, playing complimentary football, and we just got to kind of get back to that. All three phases of the game. So looking forward to that. But that's all I got for today. Just like I said, just wanted to talk about two of my favorite teams, some questions that I've gotten or have from myself about the direction and where they could be. And look, I'm excited. The season's not over for either team. Both have something to play for. Obviously, I think Alabama is more so thinking championships. I think the Saints are more so direction. Where are we going as a team? Who are we? Will the guys currently in the building be around? And that's both player personnel and staff personnel. And so I think it's enjoyable either way. Every week has been enjoyable for the most part. Not everyone's been a win, but it's been enjoyable. And I think even with Spencer Rattler being the quarterback for the Saints, he's made it enjoyable. Now you just want to watch to see how the kid develops. You're not even worrying about wins or losses. And I think as far as the Alabama Crimson Tide are concerned, um, I'm loving the development of Jalen Milrow as a leader, as a passer, just as an overall player. And I'm loving the development of what our defense is. I think those guys are starting to get Coach Womack's message, and there's going to be some things that I think just get cleaned up. And we'll be the type of defense that we want to be. And I think if we're the type of defense we want to be, and we continue to be the type of offense we have been, maybe clean some things up there too with protection and penalties and taking care of the ball in recent weeks, we'll be good. So Who that and Roll Tide. Looking forward to seeing you guys tune in to the Bayou Ballers podcast tomorrow. I'm sure we're going to be talking about the Thursday night matchup, Saints versus Broncos, but also kind of giving you a little preview of the NBA season. And I'll follow that with my Friday episode of No Disrespect. But again, remember the last one for maybe the next 3 to 4 months. Um, going to follow that up with a preview of the NBA season, where we'll talk about my bold predictions, who I think might make the playoffs, who I think might take home certain hardware this year. So really looking forward to that. But as always, if there's anything I said that offended anyone, it's a good thing. It's an opportunity for me to learn, and it's an opportunity for you to teach me. All I ask is that you keep it respectful. Peace.